Alrighty then, we are going to be talking Dragonphoenix Chronicles, also known as Indomitable. This is a 2013 Greek film, and it's actually filmed originally in the Greek language, but you can actually get dubbed versions both in English and in German, I believe. And this one is a very low budget film. It's made for around 10,000 euros, so don't be expecting a kind of Lord of the Rings quality production here. In fact, it actually reminds me very much of the kind of the Italian style sword and sorcery movies that we had in the 80s that were kind of coming off the back of the success of sort of Conan the Barbarian. In fact, this story does remind me a lot of Conan the Barbarian. It actually has quite a lot in common with that movie in regards to its kind of plot, but also a kind of a sprinkling of Spartacus. Now, this one is directed and written by a guy called Thanos. No, not that Thanos. His name is Thanos Kermitius, or something like that. And he is the director. He's one of the writers, and he actually stars in this movie as well as the general called Falco, who's actually probably my favourite character, to be quite honest. Anyway, and it focuses primarily the story on this Dragar character, who is this barbarian. At the beginning of the movie, he's basically being sort of captured by the ruling class and is a slave and fighting in gladiator matches and things like that. Basically, he escapes and takes this kind of nobleman's daughter hostage called Valeria, who's kind of this kind of princess type, and basically kind of goes on the run to try and escape. Obviously, with her as a hostage to kind of like basically secure his freedom. And of course, they send out a variety of different troops out in the woods to try and stop him. And then they come across an even greater evil. So let me talk about the positives and negatives of this film. Like I said, this is a low budget film, so it's not going to look fantastic, although I do say it looks the location shooting here, obviously being from Greece, does benefit from some fantastic locales, and obviously Greece is quite a nice sunny place, so it does have some nice kind of scenery and stuff in here as well. So the main issues I have with this film, and to be honest with you, it's quite a big one, and it will start with the kind of writing, because to me the characters are really poorly written. They have these really flimsy motivations. I mean, we'll take Valeria, who is this kind of the daughter of this noblewoman. At the beginning of the movie, the father is basically, anything for my daughter, I'll buy you a slave, whatever to keep you happy. So it looks like they have a pretty decent relationship, and this girl seems kind of stuck up. She's captured by Dragar, and for no apparent reason, while she's kind of being captured, she decides, okay, I'm just going to, he's not going to let her go, and he's like, no, I'm going to hang around with you, basically, now, because I don't want to go back. And there's no motivation for it, and so much so, I won't go into spoilers, basically, but things happen throughout the movie that just don't make sense. Now, we learn that she has a somewhat strained relationship with her brother, but there's nothing to suggest that she has that kind of relationship with her father, at least that we see on screen. We're told a little bit later on, don't really get on with my father, but we don't see that. They seem to be getting on fine at the beginning of the movie, and it goes so far as down a pretty dark path, I have to say, and it doesn't make sense. Another one, basically, Dragar's wife, and he's kind of going to try and find her. The way she acts when she, without kind of giving anything away, the way she acts when he eventually finds her doesn't make sense. They are poorly written characters, and it's a real shame, because obviously the writing doesn't cost anything necessarily. Obviously, it's just one of these things that I think are very poorly written. A couple of other kind of bugbears for me. Although the costuming looks fantastic, I have to say, for the budget, what annoyed me a little bit was the modern feel to it. Things like the haircuts and the way that they were shaved and things like that. Again, stuff that doesn't cost a lot of money, but would have benefited this kind of fantasy feel, because everyone has, or nearly enough everyone, has a kind of very modern look to them. When you take all the kind of the armour off, they kind of, the way their hair is cut, or the way they're shaven, things like that, basically. It kind of bothered me that it kind of looked... I don't think a shaved head, to be honest with you, is a particularly good look for a barbarian, but even aside from him, pretty much all of the other peripheral characters just have a very kind of modern look about them. Now, if you kind of... if a budget is not going to be something you're interested in, watching low budget films, then yes, some of the effects here are going to be pretty bad. particularly the kind of the monster fight at the end. There's this kind of like paper mache monster. To be honest with you, for me personally, I can kind of look past it because I appreciate that this is obviously a low budget film and there's only so much you can do. But if you're watching as a kind of just a general member of the public, you know, you may be thinking, what the shit is this? The kind of effects don't look too bad. I just say there are, for the budget though, I think it does pretty well in the effects, if anything, but they make that €10,000 stretch, I think, because like some of the suits of armour, for example, I thought looked very, very good. And some of the kind of just a general costuming, I think, looks pretty good. Weapon design, all looks fantastic. Now, apparently, this was actually choreographed by professionals, but the action to me is also something that I found pretty bad. The action was quite badly shot. I'm not quite sure if it was well choreographed, but the way it was shot just didn't look very good to me. It was kind of just a little bit kind of slow and clunky, and we had people kind of like just waiting around to get kind of like hacked up and stuff like that. So I had some issues with the way the action was shot. I mean, apparently it was kind of choreographed by these kind of special swordsmiths or something, but it didn't look that fantastic to me, if I'm completely honest with you. It does have some typical kind of fantasy archetypes here as well. Dragar to me was not particularly well developed. He barely says anything at the beginning of the movie, and it's clearly kind of being influenced by that kind of the Conan Barbarian thing, but he just doesn't have the charisma. And he's actually, apparently the guy who is Dragar actually created this kind of comic book that it's based on as well. But you know, he gets a little bit more fleshed out as the film progresses, but initially you're thinking this guy doesn't really have a lot of sort of personality behind him. He just kind of seems like a lump of meat. My personal favourite character I mentioned was a guy called Falco, who was like the captain of the guard, and who was actually the director as well. To me, he was kind of the best he was the best actor in the film. Some of his kind of facial expressions and when he reacted to things, I thought was better than anyone else, to be honest with you. And I kind of quite liked his character because he was a little bit more of a grey character, shall we say. But, you know, like I said, I think it does have quite a lot of sort of set pieces in it. I think some of the kind of the sort of pagan-y, sort of devilly worship stuff that we get towards the end of the film, I think is all pretty interesting and kind of makes for a more interesting film than when we started off. I think this film probably, the second half of it is a lot better than the first, to be quite honest with you. But it's kind of like there are some shortcomings that I felt that could have been fairly easily remedied with not a lot of money. Basically, like I said, the writing for me was the worst thing, and just some of the kind of the visual choices as well. But like I said, it looks kind of pretty, great locations, interesting weaponry, interesting armour, stuff like that. But I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.